Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, March the 27th. And welcome to our commentary. Let me begin with this interesting situation over at NBC. As you may be familiar, that a week or so ago, NBC hired as a political contributor Rhonda or Rona McDaniel Romney. I think that's her name. I forgive me if I confuse her name, but she's the daughter-in-law of Mitt Romney, and she was chairman of the National Republican Party. And she was voted out or resigned, whatever the case may have been. So she was hired by NBC to be a political contributor. This is a very common thing that happens. People work in campaigns, they go work with the media, they go back and forth. That's just the nature of the game. For example, George Stephanopoulos, who is now he does ABC this Sunday, or the Sunday show with ABC. He used to work in the Clinton campaign, was actually a part of the Clinton administration for some time. So this stuff doesn't bother me. It's the way it is. It's that's the way it is. So it doesn't bother me one bit. But apparently there was a incredibly negative reaction to the hiring of this lady over at NBC, and they all said, she was, I guess, not a journalist and couldn't be trusted and so on. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that she, I think at one time, asked a few questions about the 2020 election and so on. But anyway, to make a long story short, they objected to this lady. They have dismissed or fired her or terminated her contracts. The poor lady was on the job like for a week, and then she's gone. Now, what happens now, I don't know. There are rumors that she may sue NBC for defamation. I don't know if you can win that case, but I think she's right. They said some very nasty things about her, and I thought very unfair in the way that she was treated. That much I think she's right about. But I think there's a bigger point here, and that is what's going on at NBC. I can tell you right now that no Republican is going to go to MSNBC. I mean, they're having problems now getting any serious Republican to go on that network after this. You can forget it. You can also forget the Republican National Committee accepting somebody from NBC or an NBC debate. You can forget that. So I think in the end, NBC loses, and they lose because they've taken sides, and they're supposed to be journalists, and they've taken sides. And I think it was a very stupid move on the part of NBC. Now, they can do whatever they want. It's a private company. They can hire and fire whoever they want. But I think they've hurt their credibility, in my opinion, by doing this. So that's as much as I'm going to say about it. But MSNBC is really a joke, and I think they've confirmed it with this behavior. Now, of course, they're part of NBC, so I guess NBC had to fire her. But a lot of it came from MSNBC. And I think NBC News is making a huge mistake by allowing MSNBC and the very radical agenda of MSNBC to become the face of NBC. I think they're making a big, big mistake by allowing that to happen. So good luck to Rona McDaniel. I'm sure she'll be just fine. And I'm sure she'll end up with another network. But what a mess. What a mess. And how silly the reaction of many of the people over there, who, by the way, were completely in the business of denying elections when it was Donald Trump. I'm sure all of you remember, there are all kinds of videos about this, of Democrats denying that Donald Trump won the election and all this kind of stuff. Apparently, it's okay when they do it. But man, when somebody raises question on our side about the election, then I guess we become evil people. Amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. Well, let me tell you something about the race here for the Senate in Texas. As you know, we have a race for the Senate. Senator Ted Cruz is defending his seat. He's going for a third seat in the U.S. Senate, or third term in the U.S. Senate. He's running against Congressman Allred, Colin Allred, who's a congressman here in the Dallas area. And the latest poll that came out has Senator Cruz up by 6 points. Now, if you look at the last three, the last three polls, the only ones we have, Senator Cruz is up by 8 points. But the interesting thing, and I've got a post about this coming out Thursday morning. The interesting thing about this is that Colin Allred seems to be stuck at 45%. He's not going beyond 45%. For whatever reason, he doesn't seem to get up there. And that's the same problem that Beto O'Rourke had in the 2022 campaign for governor, that he got stuck at 45% and just couldn't go up. And I think that's how it's going to be. I believe that this is going to be about a 7 to 8 point difference in favor of Ted Cruz. Now, the wild card in all of this is the presidential election, because the same poll that has Senator Cruz +6 has President Trump +11. So, I can see some potential there for Senator Cruz to catch up a little bit with President Trump and be maybe 8 or 9 points ahead, especially if Trump can deliver a huge turnout on the Republican side. But I think the bottom line is this election for the Senate is settling into a comfortable. I predicted that it was going to be anywhere from 5 to 7, and maybe around 6 to 8 points, which would be a good victory for Senator Cruz. Colin Allred has two problems. Number one, he's not well known. Very little is known about him. But the other problem that he has is that a lot of things are going to come out about him over the next few months that I think will associate him a lot with Nancy Pelosi, because they have a very similar voting record. And he's going to have a very hard time defending that in Texas, particularly when you get out of the cities into the suburbs and into some of the rural areas. I just don't think he's going to be able to defend a lot of his record. So we will see. Now, for those of you who enjoy polling and all this kind of stuff, RCP is Real Clear Politics. It's a great website. And you should check the polls at least once a week. They update them quite a bit. And they have something called the average. And the average right now has President Trump leading in Texas close to 10 points. And nationwide, they have President Trump right now projected at 312 electoral votes, so roughly 40 more than what you need. And the election map projected, again, this is all a projection based on current polls. The election map for President Trump in 2012 would be very similar to the election map of 2016, meaning that he wins Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Arizona. I think Nevada is the one that he won in 2016. So it looks, very similar to 2016, the last time that he won the presidency. So we'll see where it goes. But if you're President Trump or you're Senator Cruz, you have to like your position here in Texas. Well, another big election matter is that Robert Kennedy selected a vice president. Now, I was really surprised with the selection that he made. He selected a businesswoman, I guess, out of California with a long track left-wing voting record or left-wing participation record. And I didn't expect that was going to be his choice. I thought he would move to the center and try to appeal more to independents and maybe disenchanted Republicans, but that's not what he did with his pick. I mean, with this pick, he has pretty much put his campaign in a direction where they're going to be appealing probably to disenchanted Democrats, as well as competing with some of the others for the left-wing liberal vote. So he's not hurting Trump one bit by making this election, but I do think he is potentially hurting President Biden, because it's clear that this is a very liberal ticket, and many disenchanted liberals will go with Kennedy if they're not happy with Joe Biden. But I am surprised. I thought he would pick a different kind of VP to send a message of unity and a message of, hey, I'm serious about this unity stuff that I keep talking about in the campaign. A couple of things that are going on right now. One that I'm very confused about, and then this abortion pill that is in front of the Supreme Court right now. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen with this. My preference is that the issue should be settled at the state level. But, at the same time, though, because it is a pill that can be mailed from one state to the other, then you do get, of course, into interstate commerce, and that does become then a federal issue. But the idea that a woman would take a pill to terminate a pregnancy is something that I just don't quite understand. I mean, a pregnant woman would take a pill to terminate a pregnancy. And I've heard all kinds of horror stories about pregnant women dealing with all kinds of unintended consequences from that pill. So, look, I think it should be approved at the state level. That much I believe. And I hope they really do their research on this, because the idea that you take a pill and all of a sudden, I guess you're not pregnant anymore, that sounds almost like a science fiction movie. I don't know how else to put it to you. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, one of those crazy movies that they make about controlling the human body. Well, a couple of things on this day in history. Back in 1930, a fellow by the name of David Jensen was born. Now, you probably know him as Dr. Dr. Kimball on that very popular television show, The Fugitive. I used to love that show. I don't know what happened to that show or when it went off the air, but I liked it a lot. And of course, The Fugitive was the story of that man who was running away from the police for a murder he said he didn't commit. And he was a fugitive, literally going from town to town. And it was a very interesting show. I'll just put it that way. But he was born on this day in 1930, passed away sometime in the 1980s. And on this day in 1984, if you're a football fan, then you remember that this was the day that the Baltimore Colts literally packed up their team and moved to Indianapolis. They literally came at 4 o'clock in the morning. They did all the stuff. They packaged everything in the trucks, and they left the city of Baltimore. They didn't even tell the mayor that they were leaving the city that day. So they picked up all the stuff, put it in these trucks, and left the city of Baltimore and became the Indianapolis Colts. And I had a little association with Baltimore during this time. In fact, I have a post over at the American Thinker about this. I would invite you to check it out, because nobody in Baltimore thought that this was possible. Nobody thought that the Baltimore Colts, the lovable Baltimore Colts, would ever leave Baltimore, but they did. They did. They went to Indianapolis. And I remember the morning that this happened, the day that this happened, and the shock, absolute shock from all of the Baltimore Colts fans who couldn't believe it, who just couldn't believe it, that the Colts left Baltimore and went to Indianapolis. Now, that's almost 40 years ago. So now they have a new team called the Ravens, and I'm sure everybody is a big Ravens fan. But the older generation remembers the Colts, Johnny Unitas, and some of those great teams, Raymond Berry and some of those great players from that time. The Baltimore Colts left Baltimore on this day in 1984. Man, I remember that day. I remember that day quite well. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.